Firefox.
Hello,
Boom!
welcome to Thunder Nerds. I'm Brian Vinson.
And I'm Frederick Phillip von Assuming the Thunder Nerds, a conversation with the people behind the technology that love what they do
And do tech good.
We're doing tech. Welcome to this afternoon of the UX Dev Summit.
Where is
it? It's in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, in the USA.
Yes, in the USA and Florida.
Yeah.
It's a 5-day summit, and today is actually the presentation type day, and the previous 4 days were workshops.
There's some peripheral workshops, I believe, going on today too as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and speaking of people that spoke and have a workshop, we have David Okun. Welcome to the show, David.
Thanks for having me. I need to bring the same energy that y'all have. I was not expecting that energy.
That's all right, man.
Y'all are
we got the energy. You could just be you.
That's cool. No, I'm generally a very energetic person, but it's been a long week, so I need to make sure I still bring it. So no worries.
It's all good. We're there.
Man, that's lucky y'all. I did not get to hit Starbucks myself, but I'll get there.
I got the cold brew. I'm all about it.
Oh man, I've been getting into cold brew more recently.
Yeah, it's like a cold brew. Yeah, sorry, audio listeners, I'm hitting the microphone there.
I actually do.
It's good, man.
Vanilla fig.
Trust me, dude. It's 2018. Trust me, it's good.
No, I cold brew at home.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, I'm all about the coffee. I have French press. I have a cold brew set up that I do and everything. But I've never seen that. It's like a little growler of cold brew.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, those are pretty big.
Excited.
I've seen them at some of the bigger Starbucks. Like they have the signature Starbucks, and you go to some locations, and they have the real nice growlers and everything. So they're pretty cool.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah, man.
David, before we get into your workshop, let's talk a little bit about you. Have some context for our watchers, audience, listeners.
Yeah, who the heck are you?
Who the heck are you, David?
I'm just a dude, guy. I'm just some guy from Texas. No, I'm a developer advocate for IBM, and I come from a mobile development background. So mobile, passionate, care about.
Nice.
And Swift is my favorite programming language, I guess, if we're staying.
Swift. Okay, cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
And as far as my workshop is concerned, I've gone from being strictly a mobile developer and being pigeonholed in that favor to trying to focus on becoming more polyglot. And so the idea behind this workshop was to say you can take any programming language you want, deploy an app on IBM Cloud, and you can actually interface Watson with it as well if you want to. So the amount of power that you have at your fingertips with this stuff is it's unlimited, but it's diverse. And I think that's really important because you've got people that come from all different walks of life that, it's hard to learn something new. So when you can show people that there's any approach you want to take, you can get it done, I think that's really powerful.
Okay, great. So what's the main point that we want to take away from your workshop? Because this is, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe I read this as a full day workshop.
It was.
Yeah. And it's titled, by the way, APIs and Watson in any language on IBM Cloud. Any language.
Any language.
Spanish, French.
Sumerian.
Right?
And you can do that in theory. I mean, if you speak any of those languages, you can do it too. Yeah. No, we decided to use Node.js, which is very, very popular and available to anybody.
What is that?
I'm really pushing the limits there of what's possible. But we also chose Swift as the language to show how you could deploy an API, link it up with Watson Artificial Intelligence, and just make use of it in your application that you could.
Now, before you ask your question, now is it basically some module or something that's imported into Swift that you utilize, or is it an API that's called? How does
there's a couple different things. So the cool thing is that there's an SDK you can download that's available for, if you go to github.com/Watson SDK or Watson Developer Cloud, I think. We'll have to look that up, but maybe you can put the link across the bio or something like that. Yeah. But you go there and there's an SDK for Java, there's an SDK for Node, Swift on the phone.
You guys are busy.
Python. We have been working our tails off getting this stuff available because we want one developer to feel like they're pigeonholed, and we want to make sure cloud services are available for everybody.
Yeah.
So these SDKs exist, and you can import the module, but there's also a REST API. So you can, with most of these languages, if you know how to make a REST API call in those languages, you can just use whatever, convention
that is nice.
Yeah, man.
Really awesome. What I was going to ask you is, what are some of the things people might not know about the power of Watson and why somebody would actually seek that out to use it?
So a little bit of the evolution of Watson, so to speak, is
he's the guy on Jeopardy. I know that, right?
See, that's the thing, but that's what people really think. They go to IBM. They go to IBM. They used to go to IBM.com, and I have spoken to actual people that have thought, "Where's my box? Like, where is my box with Watson inside it that can speak to me and can go contribute on Jeopardy? It works.
Yeah, well, and that's what I want to get to is that how do you break that that idea in people's heads, that misconception, and tell them exactly. I mean, for the people that have no idea what it is.
Well, you send developer advocates to go do workshops at UX Dev Summit. No, I mean, you do that, but that's certainly part of the outreach. But I mean, I think that there's just making sure of making people understand that they have the capabilities to do all these things. Now, to that point, though, the problem was when people think of Watson, or at least this is the way I thought of it, and I'm sure somebody can relate that's listening to this. I think that when Watson first came out, people thought it was a box and you could ask it a question, and kind of like Siri or Google Assistant.
I mean, you guys did present it as a box. I mean, I've seen the commercials.
I didn't present it.
You specifically did.
I'm the guy. If you're watching this video, you're right.
Don't on Dave.
But that's where that's probably where that perception initially came.
It is, and I mean, it certainly enables people to think that Watson kind of can do anything. You know? But that's cool. But then, but then at the same time, you start to think about, okay, what are the APIs that Watson has available? Because out of the box, you've got things like translation, which yes, Google Translate exists, but we have a translation API too. You've got things like natural language classification, natural language understanding, where you can give it a website URL and it will tell you the sentiments of that website. It will tell you some things based on what you say about it. You can analyze tone. So like, for instance, if you want to have a customer service representative chatting with somebody, you can have Watson analyze the messages that come in and specify this person seems angry, this person seems sad, etc. But even then, that was, I don't want to say basic, but it was the beginning of Watson in the sense that there were these specific APIs that you could use, and they were all called Watson. Well, what's really cool now is that Watson is really flexing into being able to generate your own models, and there's a lot of things being developed with something called Watson Studio, where you can go and actually create your own models in a web UI and use those models however you want. So it truly is turning into a box. So
give me a scenario
example. A workshop that I like to do with a coworker of mine, Justin. You can actually take some data, and it's just linear regression data, but you can go into Watson Studio and you can train Watson Studio on that linear regression data to detect when somebody is going to have heart failure based on their age, whether they smoke, their weight, a number of other different characteristics. And you can train that model live in a Jupyter notebook right in front of you, and then you deploy that model right to a web API that you can make in Node, and then you just test it live and it works.
Wow.
So it's really cool. Like, so here's the thing is, especially with artificial intelligence and with machine learning, there's certainly a learning curve to go with there, but we're working really, really hard on making that less steep so that there's ways to onboard and there's ways to try this stuff out. So the website you can go to for this stuff, and here's me doing my marketing job, is developer.ibm.com.
And we'll put a link in that and show.
Yeah, developer.ibm.com/code. And there's a whole number of what we talk through of real life use cases that people have had to solve, solving IBM problems. So going to that, developer.ibm.com/code, and you go there and you'll see all these different use cases that you can go through. So.
That's pretty amazing.
So Watson really has turned into pretty much a box that, the world is your oyster, and nobody holds a candle to us in the sense that we can train models and we have the capabilities to do artificial intelligence better than any company in the world, in my opinion.
Now, I'm curious. We know the obvious competitors to you guys, Google. Microsoft even has some pretty interesting things as well. Now, the big advantage is, can you guys actually interface with those platforms as well? Could I set up my connection with Watson and then utilize Watson to do some sort of interconnecting so I could use part of Microsoft services, part of is that something that's possible with Watson? Your
platform is yes, with some caveats. So for example, what I mean by that is, if I have a TensorFlow model that I have, and it's a file on my computer that I end up with, and it's something that I deploy to a web API or something that I deploy on a machine that, I pass data through it and out comes predictions or something like that.
And that's the flow, TensorFlow. I'm vaguely familiar because I've been looking into this stuff. It's basically the process, like a business process or an action process of sorts, that some trigger occurs or some action occurs that goes through the flow. Is that what that is essentially?
Pretty much. So then really the line of demarcation is whether it's something that's hosted on Watson or whether it's a model that you can download and use yourself. If it's a model that you can use and download yourself, the way containers work nowadays is so cool that pretty much anything that you can load in Docker, you can deploy to any cloud. And I always tell people that, you know, the tools you can use to make APIs with IBM Cloud, you can deploy them anywhere. We want you to use IBM Cloud because, of course, we work for IBM. But the APIs you work with, you can Watson, there's the caveat of, okay, well, is this hosted? Because an IBM Watson hosted service, you're not going to be able to put that many other places. But if you take a model and you need to import that into your application, if you can containerize that, then yes, in theory, you could put that anywhere. But again, knowing that.
But you don't want to. You want to use Watson.
We want you to use Watson. So of course we make it easier to integrate it with IBM Cloud, and there's a whole mess of things to look at on there.
And I will say I'm extremely impressed. Like even even 5 years ago, the design and like development process, or maybe even a little bit longer, 5 years, it's changed radically. Like you go to IBM.com now, you're like, oh, this looks pretty good. It still has the enterprise business feel, but it's very modern.
It always it always will. Yeah. I mean, for example, what we do with Swift. So Swift is my passion, right? And when Swift was announced to have support for Linux in 2015, we jumped on that, and that's where the server-side Swift framework Kitora came out of. And so there's this other competitive framework called Vapor, which is run by you've heard of Vapor. It's amazing.
It's like Ruby on Rails for Swift for web development. That's how I look at it. Kind of,
sort of. So, but here's the interesting comparison to that. So Tanner and Logan and all the people working on Vapor, they've done absolutely amazing work, and they have made an API that's truly useful for, you know, the everyday Swift developer. I do believe that IBM have also made something, but the added edge that we take to it is we want to make sure that our REST API framework is working for enterprise as well. So we have 24/7 enterprise support for anyone using Swift on a server that wants to opt into something like that.
Let me ask you, what is the learning curve though on something like this?
On Swift or REST APIs?
No. On like doing this with Watson.
Well, there's actually a website you can go and start. There's a complete visual where you can basically, it's similar in concept to Alexa Flows, where you can basically build out like visually what you want it to do. I mean, obviously you can go into more.
Well, I want to hear what you think. I've seen
that website that I called out earlier, the slash code. That is super helpful because for someone who knows a little bit about GitHub and working with repositories, there's all these open source examples that literally will walk you through click by click what you can do to get linked up with any number of things. Now, if you go on IBM Cloud, you go over to the hamburger menu and you select Watson all the way at the bottom, and there's starter kits that are supposed to walk you through how to integrate them into any number of applications that you have. I really hope my boss watches this because I'm doing my best to market it for IBM Cloud.
That's great.
In all seriousness, though, we are really trying to make the learning curve more shallow for IBM Cloud and for Watson specifically, because we know working with artificial intelligence can be, and you know, especially now with me, you always have to think about the ethical implications of working with artificial intelligence. Like I stopped my workshop on 5 minutes on Wednesday to tell everyone to stop what they're doing and think about, you know, what it is that you might do, because the reckoning of software engineering is happening as we speak.
Kind of like the Google duplex that was recently announced.
I showed an example of that.
It's cool, but
there's two ways that you can fall on that, because Google duplex is amazing, and the Turing test is no longer a concern. Like that moment showed the general public that the Turing test is no longer a concern, because those people.
Really, you think so?
What is the Turing test, right? The Turing test is knowing whether can an artificial intelligence pass for a human, and can the person speaking with that artificial intelligence
disseminate
to be able to determine whether or not. So those people.
I still thought they sounded weird, though.
That you did, yes.
But the people that
somebody on a phone though might. I mean, if they're not.
Duped by Google dupe. I hesitate to use the word duped, but they were speaking with them. How they had no idea they were speaking with artificial intelligence.
Exactly.
That's the. I mean, surely that's not the point of it, but at the same time, the Turing test was absolutely passed because the person on the other side of the phone line had no idea they were talking to a robot, and you know they would approach that conversation differently had they known they weren't speaking to a human. So that is it's a watershed moment in computer engineering and computer software, and that's why I think anybody who plays with this stuff, please think about the ethical implications of what you're working with if you decide to work with AI
or Skynet.
Skynet. If Skynet's listening, they're shutting down this video feed right now.
No.
Well, I know, David. You got a short timeline. You got to get going.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
He has to catch a plane.
Okay.
Yeah, but so with that being said, do you want to any kind of final remarks that or comments you want to tell our audience about what you do or?
Think about ethical use of artificial intelligence. I beg you. It's with great power comes great responsibility, and chemistry had its. It's not a small thing to compare. Chemistry had its reckoning when the nuclear bomb was invented. It is very, very scary what's going on right now, and software engineering is going through a reckoning. Please be mindful of that as you work with the tools that you have available to you.
Yeah, well said. All right, and how could people find out about you if they want to follow you on Twitter?
I'm on Twitter, DOKUN24, the numbers, and I'm also on Instagram. I'm not on Facebook. I haven't been on Facebook for 2 years actually, and my life is better off for it.
Oh, nice.
But I am on Twitter, Dokun24.
All right, great. So. Perfect, and we'll have those linked up in the show notes. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Dave.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah,
thanks, y'all.
Thanks, everybody.